Hi, I'm Rhiannon, and this is my oldest daughter, Junie. And we are talking to you today about our experiences at TVUUC because of the stewardship campaign kickoff on February 21st. Prior to the pandemic, we loved coming to TVUUC on Sundays for the service and especially for RE. We continue to look forward to coming into the beautiful sanctuary and children's rooms when it is safe to do so. In the meantime, though, we are so grateful for the opportunities we have had to deepen our connections through virtual gatherings. We live in a rural county, and the tremendous work that TVUUC staff have put into virtual offerings means that we often connect to church 3 or even 4 times a week now.
Yay.
Even during the pandemic, my family has been able to deeply connect to a group of people of all ages who reflect deeply and are working towards a more just and peaceful world. As a family, we are enriched by reflecting on Sunday online services together and working together on pick-me-up bags and Camp in a Box and CDJ library books so thoughtfully put together by Catherine and Miriam. Most of all, both in the church building and online, TVUUC has been welcoming to my family of 4, each of us with our own religious or faith backgrounds and individual journeys. My daughter, here Junie, wrote a poem for school last week about the welcoming nature of TVUC. It's entitled The Church. You want to read it to us now, Junie?
Welcome. Come in and. Whoever you are, welcome. Whatever your past, welcome. Welcome. Welcome home.
And that sums it up, feeling welcomed home. Henry David Thoreau said, "Goodness is the only investment that never fails." And TVUUC does so much good for the community, our church community, and the world at large. Thank you for letting me share with you today.
Thank you for all you do for our community.
And thank you for your generosity during this year's campaign.
Good morning. In March of 2020, at the start of the pandemic, many of us believed, myself included, that the lockdown would be short-lived. But very soon, we found ourselves living through the same daily patterns, day in and day out. And it has felt at times like we were stuck in a repeating time loop, of some sci-fi movie or novel. But even the monotony of isolation, in there we have experienced and discovered new ways of connecting to make it through until we can be together again. One of those ways was proposed and led by our own Mark Mahundro, who decided to start a regular ritual on Facebook, where a few times a week on our church's Facebook page, we would offer a chalice lighting and extinguishing. We now have over 300 such videos. And it's because of those videos and because of people volunteering their time in this community that we're able to offer this greeting to you this morning.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning, Joy.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Hi.
Good morning.
It's so good to be with you all here this morning. Come, let us worship together.
Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. This is our great covenant.
Sometimes I lay under the moon and thank God I'm breathing. And then I pray, oh dear
The story I have to share with you today is one from Kristen Mayer called The Keeper of the Rain. And it begins not so very long ago, in a place not so very different from this one, where the Keeper of the Rain lived. Now every day the Keeper of the Rain carefully watched the creatures and the plants, and when they began to droop with thirst, she whispered the word that brings the rain, and they stood tall again. Each day the Keeper of the Rain carefully listened to the rivers and the streams, and when they swelled to a roar, she whispered the word that sends the rain away, and the waters were quiet again. After many such days, more than you or I could count, the Keeper of the Rain was weary. Have you ever been really worn out and tired? She was tired of always watching, always listening, always paying attention to other things and beings. And a new Keeper of the Rain had been born, but he was still a boy. It would be years before he was ready to take over. The Keeper of the Rain said to herself, I can't wait years. And so she went to find the boy. She heard splashing coming from a pond, and she peered through the cattails and saw him standing knee-deep in the water, and then going deeper. He bent down and plunged his hands to the bottom of the pond and stood up with an armload of muck, and then he bent again and caught hold of a wriggling crayfish. He is young, thought the Keeper, but then again, so was I. And so she walked through the cattails and into the water. She bent down, and for a few minutes she whispered into the boy's ear. And when she was done, she stood up, she smiled for the first time in ages, and she walked away. The boy watched her for a few minutes, until the crayfish in his fingers wriggled loose and plopped into the pond. And he bent down in search of the creature, and he forgot all about the Keeper and what she had told him. And the boy splashed and played in the water until his lips turned blue and quivered. Have you ever been so cold? Then he tromped up to his favorite sun-covered rock. It was low enough to climb up, and it was flat on top, and it was as ancient as the rain. And he lay basking in the sun, listening to peeping frogs, and telling the rock his stories of muck and cattails and crayfish. And the rock listened and laughed in that low, rumbling way of rocks. The next day, the boy splashed and played in the water until his lips turned blue and quivered again. Then he tromped up through the sand and grass to the sun-warmed rock, and he lay basking in the sun, again listening to the frogs and telling his stories. But then, all of a sudden, the sky grew dark and the air became cool. What do you think is happening? A wet raindrop fell on the boy's back. And the boy said, I don't like rain, as more cold raindrops fell. And then, that is when he remembered the Keeper and what she had told him. So he spoke the word that sends the rain away, and the raindrops stopped. The sun reappeared, and the boy lay back down on the rock. So, every day after that, the boy played and splashed in the pond until he got so cold, and then he went up to the rock and lay in the sun, listening to the frogs and telling his stories. And if raindrops came, he simply whispered them away. And many such days passed. As the boy lay basking in the sun, one day the rock asked him, have you noticed the trees and the plants are turning yellow? And the boy sat up and looked. I like the color yellow, said the boy. They need rain, said the rock. I don't like rain, said the boy. I know, said the rock. And many more such days passed.
As the boy lay basking in the sun one day, the rock asked, "Have you noticed the trees and plants are turning brown?" And the boy sat up and looked. "I like the color brown," said the boy. "They need rain," said the rock. And what do you think the boy said? He said, "I don't like rain." And the rock replied, "I know." Many more such days passed. And then again another day came when the boy lay basking in the sun, and the rock asked him, "Have you noticed you have to walk further to get to the pond?" And the boy sat up and he looked. And he asked a question. What do you think he asked? He said, "Who moved my pond?" And the rock said, "No one. The pond is shrinking. It needs rain." And then the boy said, "It's too quiet. The frogs aren't peeping." And the rock replied, "Frogs cannot live without rain. Nothing can." And the boy felt a heaviness in his chest. He had no words to whisper it away. He felt the warm sun on his back that felt so good, and the weight in his chest that felt awful. And finally, he whispered the word that brings the rain. Cold, wet drops fell on his back, but the boy let the rain fall and fall. And when he heard the rivers and streams swell to a roar, he whispered the word that sends the rain away. "I still don't like rain," said the boy, "but I love my pond." "I know," said the rock. "I know."
As Jametta would say, joy. And a joy is that the report that we have at the time of this recording is that Jametta is home and recovering well from her stroke. We extend our concerns, our prayers, our thoughts to others in the congregation who are dealing with recovery from their illnesses and conditions. And we eagerly embrace the joys that they may have. Perhaps we can hear some of those joys in the coffee hour after this service. Now, let us join in a time of meditation, reflection, prayer. May we be spared the same old, same old. May we be spared even more of the same old, same old. But as long as we're dealing with daily, weekly, monthly repetition of schedules, of complaints, of political strife, of news stories, of so much, may we learn something new from the same old, same old. May we learn to modify how we process the same old, same old. May the same old lead us to new coping skills. May the same old help us to learn how we can be the new and creative within it. May the same old be yet another opportunity for our personal growth. Maybe the same old is a divine message that there are still lessons for us to learn. Oh, and patience. Patience will not come to us immediately. But may a bit more of the same old help us to learn to be somewhat more patient. The universe will not care if we're patient, but patience will calm our souls. Grant me the serenity to accept those things I cannot change, perhaps including the same old, and grant me the courage and wisdom to change those things that I can and should change, maybe in some small ways, including me. Amen.
I'd like to introduce everyone to David Asbury. This is his first time playing with us. He has joined our music program, and we are going to sing now Here on the Paths of Every Day, which is a tune that's unfamiliar to most of us, so I'm going to ask David to play it through one time before we sing it. This tune is from the 1835 Southern Harmony, the first great tune book in America.
This making of a whole self takes such a very long time. Pieces are not sequential, nor our supplies. We work here, then there, hold up tattered fabric to the light, sew past dark, intent, use all our thread. Sleeves may come before length, buttons before a rounded neck. We sew at what most needs us, and as it asks, we sew again. The self is not one thing, once made, unaltered. Not midnight task alone, not after other work. It's everything we come upon, make ours. All this fitting of what once was and has become.
Good morning. Great to see everyone again. For those of you that I missed last week, my name is Taylor Thomas, and I serve as the Stewardship Chair for TVUC. Last week, I reminded everyone that our pledge campaign will be coming up, kicking off February 21st, and the next few weeks you're going to be hearing from a lot of different folks about what TVUC means to them as we enter into this new pledge season. But today, I'm coming to you again because it's Generosity Sunday. and that means that any gifts made today will go directly to the TVUC operating fund. Earlier this week, it's funny that I was asked to do this offering introduction because I was on a call with Surge, showing up for racial justice, and at some point in the call there was an appeal to make a gift to Surge and support the efforts, and the person making the appeal said, I would ask you to reflect on what you would like to give and then consider what would make you uncomfortable. And that really struck me, to give when you feel uncomfortable. And while the current situation that we are in has obviously left a lot of folks extremely uncomfortable, and we wouldn't want anyone to put themselves in a situation that would leave them even, worse off than they are currently with the pandemic. But the sentiment still rang true with me in that so much of philanthropy is about us evaluating what organizations mean to us, how secure we are financially most often, but it could be time, talent, treasure, anything like that, and then considering what we could give to other people. So today I just offer that to you all as kind of a thought experiment. What does TVUC mean to us? How comfortable are we? How fortunate are we? How much can we give to other people? How much can we give to TVUC? So if you would like to make a gift today to the operating fund, you can text 73256 and then TVUC and the amount you want to give. Again, that's 73256 and text TVUC and the amount you want to give. Or you could go to tvuc.org/give and make your gift there. Great to see you all again this morning, and I'll see you again soon. Bye.
Peace, don't elude me now. Comfort, take my hand. Please walk with me today and softly whisper that I can get through the shadowed valleys, glide through the uncertainties on the faith-filled wings of spirit with a blessed serenity. I want to rest in peace while I'm living here. I want to feel your love, safe and sincere. I want to release regrets and release all my fears. Can we can. Love be my companion, kindness be my shield from the darkened clouds that overwhelm, from wounds left unhealed. Courage be my close companion as I charter unknown seas, sailing to my soul desiring to my own divinity. I want to rest in peace while I'm living here. I want to feel your love, safe and sincere. I want to release regret and release all my fears.
In the world of behavioral theology, which is almost definitely a word I have just made up, there are three kinds of behavioral or moral time loops that we find ourselves in. And very scientifically speaking, they are as follows: the ham-butt phenomenon, the Star Trek behavioral anomaly, and the Groundhog Day empathetic experience. And I want to break each of these down for us in the next few minutes because they may help us understand those times that we find ourselves repeating the same behaviors over and over and over again. The first is known as the ham-butt phenomenon. Now, very quickly speaking, this story has many different versions, but the ham-butt phenomenon goes something like this. A person is preparing a lovely Christmas ham for Christmas dinner, and they cut the end off of the ham, and they're just about to throw it away because that's what their mother had always done. And they think to themselves, why am I going to throw this away? This is a perfectly good piece of ham. And so they call up their mom, and they say, Mom, why do we cut the ham off the Christmas ham? And the mom says, well, I don't know. That's just the way we always did it growing up. So they call Grandma and Grandpa up, and they say, Grandma and Grandpa, why do we cut the butt off of the Christmas ham? And Grandma and Grandpa think for a minute, and they go, oh my goodness, are you still doing that? We did that because our pan was too small. You see, they were doing it the same way they had always done it because of exactly that. It was the way they had always done it. And it wasn't until they began to ask questions that they realized that they were doing something they didn't need to do at all. Most recently, this came up for me when I was learning to fold one of these things, the bane of many laundry doers' existence, the dreaded fitted sheet. Now, some videos out there tell you that in order to fold this up, you find this corner here, and then this corner here, and you try and match them up, and you fold the corners, and you crease it, and you mash it down, and it always looks like a mess for me. But I had a thought. What am I doing trying to fold this up? Who is ever going to see it folded up? Because the only time guests will see a fitted sheet is when it's already on the bed that I have made for them when they come to stay over. So the thought occurred to me, I could just get a drawer, put the fitted sheet inside the drawer, and put the drawer away, and I didn't have to do the same thing that I've always done just because that's the way I've always done it. Now, some people like to fold their fitted sheets, and more power to them. But sometimes, the way we've always done things is not necessarily the way we have to continue doing them. This year, as we've been through a pandemic and experimented with new ways of being together in community, we've learned to move into new ways of thinking about church. It's kind of a cliche at this point. Everybody talks about how much things have changed because of the pandemic. But that's kind of the point. We see an end in sight, and now we have to start asking ourselves, what have we learned in this repeated loop of behavior? What new things or ways of worshiping or ways of being together in community do we want to hold on to? What do we want to return to? Not just what's missing, but now that we've broken the pattern of doing things the same way every single week because it's the way we've always done them, what's worth changing? What's worth expanding? And what's worth keeping? The community we build, in the words of the poet, is not one thing that once made remains unaltered. Sometimes we have a ham-butt problem, and we have to start asking questions. And those questions might lead to some liberating answers. If the ham-butt phenomenon is more of a community-focused behavioral loop that we find ourselves stuck in, I want to think more about maybe something a little more internally focused. There's a trope that's used in several Star Trek episodes across many of the series in the franchise, where the crew of a starship or a space station will get stuck in a repeating pattern over and over and over again. They get stuck in some sort of temporal anomaly. One particular episode that I really like is an episode from Star Trek The Next Generation, where the crew of the Starship Enterprise finds themselves caught in the same repeating few hours over and over and over again. It's Season 5, Episode 18, Cause and Effect, in case you're interested. There's even been some memes made about it. In the episode, the Starship Enterprise gets caught in the same repeating few hours, and each time the loop repeats, it ultimately results in the destruction of the ship. So, the crew has to figure out a way of breaking the cycle. And just a little bit of a minor spoiler here, the way they do just that is through a sense of deja vu at first. We've been here before. This all looks familiar. And then ultimately through some technological shenanigans, they're able to send themselves some information back through the time loop and give themselves clues to be able to break themselves free. It's a great episode, and you should check it out if you get the chance. But applying the same concept to my personal life, I'll call this the Star Trek behavioral anomaly that I've observed. And despite its lighthearted name, it can have some really heavy and serious implications. It's a good explanation for the ways in which events in our lives can have impacts that cause us to repeat the same patterns over and over and over again until we learn to do what we need to break the cycle. Now, it may surprise no one to hear that I am a people pleaser. I have an intense desire for everyone I meet to like me. And most of the time, this isn't a problem. But sometimes it gets me stuck in some really difficult situations. Sometimes over and over and over again. As I moved into high school and college and further into my adult years, I began to notice things about myself. And specifically, I would notice that when I would encounter another person's anger, I would find ways of overreacting, of wanting to calm them down so that they wouldn't be mad anymore. I would have a tendency to overreact and want to people please and overfunction. I remember one time in college, I was working with a group on a project in biology class. Me and two other people, we'll call them Sebastian and Robin, had to do a presentation, of all things, about the mating habits of lightning bugs in the Great Smoky Mountain National Park. We were supposed to present on a Tuesday following Memorial Day weekend. But Sebastian and Robin were really good friends and had a very long road trip planned for that weekend, so they wouldn't be able to work on it that weekend. So the three of us agreed that they would do the heavy lifting. They would do all the research, write the papers, and then they would give me what I needed to be able to make the presentation so that we could give it on Tuesday. This sounded like a good idea to me, so I agreed. And as Memorial Day weekend got closer and closer, I noticed that Robin and Sebastian kept promising to get me their research in time. Saturday morning came, the Saturday before we were supposed to give our presentation, and I still hadn't heard from them. So I texted them and asked them where they were. I got back a text from one of them that simply read, "Oh, sorry man, we just left town. We totally meant to get you copies of our papers, but we forgot." Frowny face. So there I was, stuck with a presentation, due on Tuesday, and I had nothing. Now, what I'd like to tell you I did is to call Robin and Sebastian and tell them that they needed to get their butts back in town and help me with this presentation, otherwise there wouldn't be a presentation to give on Tuesday. Instead, what I can tell you is that in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park, there are at least 19 different species of lightning bugs. The female species in the Photurus genus have learned to mimic the lightning patterns of members of the Photinus genus so that they can lure interested males into a false sense of safety so that they can eat them. I wanted Sebastian and Robin to like me, and I wanted to do a good job on the presentation. I got one of those things. I found myself oftentimes stuck in a behavioral time loop, repeating the same patterns over and over. And like the crew of the Star Trek Enterprise, I began to notice that I was repeating the same patterns over and over again. I had that sense of deja vu, that I had been here before. I was stuck and began to look for a way out. Now, I didn't have access to a spaceship or even a tricorder, but I did have access to some good friends and a counselor who were able to help me. And using that innovative technology, I began to notice clues about myself that would help me break these cycles of behavior. I began to notice things like my increased heart rate when I was mad or in conflict. I began to notice the impulse or the pull to solve other people's problems or try and fix things too quickly. And I began to learn ways of pausing for a moment and being able to ask myself in those moments, does it really have to be like this? What can I do different? Why do I want to fix things? It was incredibly difficult to acknowledge these things in myself, but ultimately, they made me a better person and resulted in better relationships with other people. And so, all of that to say that sometimes things in our lives may be difficult to deal with, but when we examine them, they allow us to move on in new ways of living. It's kind of like in the story that we heard earlier today. When we call on the rain, even though we don't like it, because it allows new things to grow. While the Star Trek behavioral anomaly is pretty heavy for an individual, I want to talk about a time loop that may be a little heavy for the community. This one is called the Groundhog Day empathic experience. In the movie Groundhog Day, the main character, Phil Connors, played by Bill Murray, is a reporter who gets stuck in the same repeating day, February 2nd, over and over and over again. He's a self-centered, arrogant, rude man who can't think of anybody but himself. And the universe that decides that to teach him a lesson, he should repeat the same day over and over and over again. And spoiler alert, in order to break out of the cycle, he has to learn to think about others and how his actions impact those around him. He has to learn empathy, humility, and kindness to break out of the same repeating patterns of everyday life. A few months into the pandemic, many people began to make comparisons between the repetition of quarantine and the repetition of the movie Groundhog Day. People pointed out that, much in the same way, until we learned to think of others, to be humble and considerate, we would be forced to repeat the same days over and over and over again. Which is to say that until we learned to wear masks and socially distance, not for ourselves, but for other people, the virus would continue to spread. Until we learned to listen to medical experts and acknowledge that there are people out there who may understand complex issues way better than we as individuals do, we would be ill-equipped to face the public health threat. And until we learned to be considerate of others and reach out to those affected by the virus, the issues of the pandemic, like isolation and pain, would only get worse. Now, I should note that many of us are not able to do the things we want because the systems in place prevent us from doing just that. Right now, there are those of us who are champing at the bit to get the COVID vaccine. But so far, the rollout at federal, state, and local levels has been incredibly difficult. I'm jealous of my husband Keith, who got his second COVID vaccine this week. And meanwhile, we've talked recently every Sunday in coffee hour about the difficulty that members of our own community are having getting their own. But the message is still the same. If we are able to humbly, justly, and mercifully continue to persevere, we just might stand a chance of breaking out of this cycle. So this morning, you might find yourself stuck in a loop. Whether it's a ham-butt problem, a Star Trek behavioral anomaly, or a Groundhog Day lack of empathy, sometimes the best thing we can do is learn to become aware of the issue, examine what needs to be done, and sometimes learn to practice a little compassion for ourselves and others. May it be so for you personally. May it be so in our community. Blessed be, and keep the faith.
Love will guide us, peace has tried us, hope inside us will lead the way on the road from greed to giving. Love will guide us through the hard night. If you cannot sing like angels, if you cannot speak before thousands, you can give from deep within you. You can change the world with your love. Love will guide us, peace has tried us, hope inside us will lead the way on the road from greed to giving. Love will guide us through the hard night.
Prophetic Church, the world awaits your liberating ministry. Go forward in the guidance of love, ask questions about your hambutts, and explore the final frontiers of empathy and compassion.
Let people living in all lands declare that fear and pain are gone. Rise above differences and stand in love and understanding one.
And now turn and greet your neighbor or give them a call or a text later on today. And now turn and greet your neighbor or give them a call or a text later on today. And now turn and greet your neighbor or give them a call or a text later on today. And after the conclusion of the service, please join us at our virtual coffee hour. We'd love to catch up, or if you're new, get to know you.